You're listening to Soul Sexy with Bridgetta and Charles, only on LA Talk Radio.
Hello.
Wait, did our sound just come on?
Just came on. Oh.
I'm wondering if anyone even heard anything I just said. In case you couldn't hear me a moment ago, Charles is not here. He is in Peru, and we have guest host Kaylee in studio with us today. Thank you so much for filling in for Charles this week.
Thank you for having me.
Awesome. Yeah, it's going to be a cool show. I'm super excited. We have guest calling in, Kevin Murphy, and he wrote a book called The 3 Rooms. I'm pretty stoked about having him in.
Yeah, sounds interesting.
And it's about changing your thoughts and which room you're living in, past, present, or future. So we'll be calling in any minute. But this has been a cool week. It's Halloweeny week. Halloweeny. We had a really fun night last night. We dressed up as, I dressed up as Supergirl, which was really fun. And she was Alice.
Alice in Wonderland. We went down the rabbit hole.
She went down the rabbit hole, and then I rescued her out of the rabbit hole, which is kind of funny because usually it would be vice versa. Like, I'm the one in the rabbit hole, and I need to be rescuing, but, I want to be perfect. Powers. Exactly. But there's a lot of different energies, going on this week.
Definitely.
Also.
Yeah.
And, I know you know a little bit more about that, too. So what, in your opinion, or in your, what is going on astrologically this week?
Well, it's interesting because Halloween is the holiday of life, death, and birth.
Yes.
And so it's kind of like we're all transforming, and it's like in our underworld. So it's a lot of change, a lot of things to look at, and a lot of rising above and rebirthing. Rebirthing.
Yeah, and also with the Venus retrograde, that's been fascinating. So a lot of Venus is always fun. It's about past relationships and healing past relationships, whether usually it's romantically, but it could be with business as well. Things that are unfinished from the past and finding a way to have closure if you didn't get that closure before, or finding a way to move forward in a better way, a more open way. So maybe if you weren't vulnerable in the past, you could be vulnerable now and get to say and the things that you never did. It's super, super healing. But
yeah.
I'm going to...
Venus to me is always about your own inner beauty. So really looking at the relationship you have with you and how that relates to other things.
Yeah, that makes such sense.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think too, maybe that inner beauty is also having that inner confidence.
Absolutely, totally.
Yeah, and so when people show up from your past, it's what were the things in the past that you didn't get to do, you didn't get to say, that you wanted to do and say? Living in your truth, which is what, our show is all about, basically. But it's literally living in your truth and being able to say what you need to and be okay with the insecurities that can come with that, because we have so much fear. We live in so much fear these days. Which is why I'm super excited to have this guest on today, because it's about how we can shift to get out of that fear.
Totally.
It's
your emotional state, your mindful state, your mental state.
Yes.
And then how do you connect to you, but then also be vulnerable?
Yes.
Not emotionally reactive.
Not emotionally reactive is the key.
And overcome those things.
Yes. And also not having anxiety. I feel like a lot of times I get anxiety, I do, and it's because my brain starts creating these stories in my head that are so silly and stupid that make no sense. I'm worrying about all this future stuff, which the future hasn't even happened yet, so why am I worrying about it?
Yeah.
And then I'm getting all worked up over it, and I'm that's not even happening what's right now. That's in the future, and I'm now creating the future that I don't want because of it. So that's really fascinating. Anyway, our guest is calling in, so... Hello, welcome to the show. Is this Kevin?
Yes.
Awesome. Yes. Thank you so much for calling into Soul Sexy today. We were just chatting about your book, The 3 Rooms, and kind of the tone of the week and how this all kind of fits together.
Yeah, there's a lot of things going on, isn't there?
There's so much going on. We were Halloween, of course, and we were talking about the death and rebirth of that in its own self, and then also with Venus retrograde that's happening right now, and how it's healing from the past and those fears that you may have had that you didn't get to do or say in the past, and how that's coming up right now and showing up. And then I think it's so fascinating having you on the show today is like synchronistic in so many ways, because I was just sharing before you called in about how, like, for me, I get anxious because I'm like so focused on what could happen and like what, all these like crazy story ideas that I have in my head, and like it hasn't even happened yet. And then we start creating that future, and it's like I'm really excited to talk about your book, The Three Rooms, and changing your thoughts and how I can change my life in that sense, and to not live in the anxiety of like what could happen or what should happen, or like,
Or the fear.
Yeah, the fears that go with that.
Yeah.
And and I guess like my question is to you is like, how did this book come like about for you? Like, is it something that you kind of like went through and just realized like how this has changed your life, or like how did that happen?
Well, I actually wasn't, didn't consciously think I'm like to write a book and what should I write about. It really was more of a premonition that I was going to write a book, and then this image of three doors kept coming to me, and one was clearly the past, and one was clearly the present, and one was clearly the future. And so I said, all right, I guess this is kind of what I'm supposed to write about. And then I just kept coming with ideas and concepts about describing the rooms behind the doors. And more as I put more and more things back there, I said, this really isn't about the three doors, this is about the three rooms. And so and it was not usual for kind of a Wall Street guy to be writing a consciousness-minded book.
Yes.
And so that was a little bit off, and people even thought I was writing a Wall Street tell-all book.
Oh,
but,
interesting.
This was, it was more, I had kind of been on the spiritual journey for probably 20 years while I was going. So.
And I think that's so neat and fascinating that you, and I was going to get to that, you did work on Wall Street for quite some time, and for a major company. You were with Citigroup, correct? And
correct.
Yeah, and the fact that you were able to like go on this spiritual journey, like how did you get involved in spirituality and in on that journey? Was there something that sparked that journey?
Well, I guess I always kind of had an interest, but I think it was probably back in around 1992, 93 when we had a major merger going on at work, and I was going through a divorce at the same time, and trying to figure out what was happening in my life, and a friend at work gave me a book from Marianne Williamson. I think it was A Return to Love. Said, here, you should read this, and it started talking about A Course in Miracles and some other things, and I think that's really what kind of got me on that path. And so I had studied A Course in Miracles, and then I just started devouring all different types of literature from that, and I started to more look within for answers, because you start to talk to people and they give you all different types of crappy advice. And I said, I'm tired of listening to bad advice that's making me feel worse. It's not making me feel better, and I don't agree with it.
Yeah,
so,
totally.
Let me look within for answers, and much better answers came.
That's amazing, and good for you to recognize that and realize that. That's a really cool journey. I feel like a lot of times our spiritual journey does start off with some crazy stress going on in our life, whether it's a breakup, a divorce, a death. It's all these things happen in our lives to kind of put us on our spiritual path in a way. And so that's do you feel now obviously that was the road? Maybe you didn't realize it at the time, but this is kind of what's led you to now. So,
yes, there's clearly things happen in our lives, for reasons, and even if they're, what we think are terrible things at the time, over time we realize that, that's sometimes they're our greatest learning experiences, and that's really what we're, here for, to, just to keep learning and growing, and if you don't grow from things and learn, then that's a challenge. But that's what we look, no matter what the situation is. And we see people with, deal with all different types of hardship and illnesses and things like that looking within for answers, can really help you grow. Okay, so why did this happen? And let me grow from this. And I'm willing to look at this a different way. And that's, that can really help.
That's incredible. And so let's talk about these different rooms that you have, the three rooms. So you've got the past, the present, and then the future. So if someone's living in the past room, what is that? I mean, that's I guess looking at the past of what I could have done this, or I should have done that sort of state.
Yes, and think of it as the most important thing is about your emotions. because the tagline for the book is "Change your thoughts, change your life," but it's really about change your emotions or change how you feel, and you'll change your life. That's what because we all want to feel better.
Yeah.
It's just that our thoughts have the biggest effect on how we feel.
Yes.
And if you think about starting in the present room and feeling good, and when you're just happy and all kinds of things are going right, and you're appreciating things, that's really where we want to stay. And we've all been there at some point. But it's our thoughts that end up pulling us out. And so when we go into the past room, it is when we're thinking about something in the past that has, caused negative emotions at the time, and now we start reliving those negative emotions. And the negative emotions are our indicator that, we've left the present room. And the same thing is in the future room. The future room is not, imagining things, nice things in the future. It is when we think about things in the future that are causing us stress and causing us anxiety. That's where we've left that comfort of the present room. And we know that by how we feel.
Yes.
And so that's going to the different rooms. Because some people say, well, we have to go into the past, and we learn from the past and we plan for the future, so we can't always be in the present. And that's not true, because recalling positive past experiences, looking back on the past and thinking about something, that first kiss, or a wonderful thing, or when you got this job promotion or something, those are fine to look back on. Look back on those and feel happy now, because you're thinking about it and you're feeling happy now. You're doing the thinking now. But it's when you get stuck in the past room with these negative emotions and you don't realize it. So you're angry about something, or you feel guilty about something over and over.
That is actually a fascinating way to look at it, because I feel like I don't live in the past so much. I'm not like, I wish I did this, or I will think about that a little bit, like if it's like a recent thing, but things that are years ago, I'm like, oh, that was so fun then. Remember this, remember that. So it's always like happy emotions in the past, I feel like. I think my biggest thing is living in the future. And the thing is, and what's hard with that is knowing, obviously, our thoughts create our future. And I'm a huge manifester, so of course, like the more that I worry about things, then they actually happen. So how can you what advice do you have to not create those stories in your head of like, oh gosh, this is gonna happen, or this could happen, and go this way? Like, how do you snap out of that and get back into the present?
Well, typically the hardest problem that people have in the future is, as you mentioned, thinking about things of, what could happen, or kind of thinking about worst-case scenarios, and looking at what is and what they don't have right now, and then projecting that into the future and saying, well, I'm never, I don't have enough money now, and I don't know how I'm going to have enough money in the future. I don't know if I'm going to get that job. And so thinking about what could happen from a standpoint of worst-case scenario, we need to change exactly that sentence that we keep saying over, like what could happen, or worrying about what could happen, or this is not going to be able to changing it to what can be. And that's completely different, because now you can literally move from the future room, worrying about what could happen with all the stress and anxiety and getting stuck there, to coming back into the present and imagining what can be.
Yes.
And now you're imagining a best case scenario. Yes. And you're thinking about that desire from a perspective as if it has already happened. Wow, what can be? Wow, this would be great. And I know. And now feel what it would be like for it to come true. And now you're feeling that emotion right now, that positive emotion. And now you're already giving gratitude for something that has yet to manifest, but you're feeling positive, and you're feeling as if it's already happened. And now you're enabling yourself to attract into your life those things you desire. Now you start to bump into that person tomorrow who's, knows this person who can, recommend this job to you. Or all those things that where your higher self or the universe, whatever you want to describe it, knows what your desires are. You're allowing them to come in. You are attracting them into your life. But when you're thinking about worst case scenario and you have that fearing, anxiety, that's going to be pushing away those very desires that you're trying to attract into your life.
Absolutely. And I feel like so many of us, that are on a conscious path, like I feel I can live in, I'd say, the 2 rooms. Obviously we live in all 3 rooms occasionally, but I feel like when you talk about looking at the negative emotions, I feel like I'm living in those 2 rooms. So it's just bringing more consciousness to when I get in that and changing the wording. So that feels really good, actually. Like the fact that you just said that, it's like what can be. And like literally that already makes me like feel like I can feel it inside those words, how they can shift already, you know?
Absolutely. Now, Kevin, I have a question about the imagining and the feeling part. I tend to daydream a lot and get stuck in the future, I think, and what could be. So is that too much living in the imagination, you think?
No, I think the imagination gets a bad rap. I think imagination is a beautiful thing, and we need to imagine more. I mean, look at all the great, even in business, all the great visionaries. They aren't using their imagination, because the more we think and we use imaginations, it becomes a reality in this, we'll call it a vibrational reality, but, it is anything that has ever manifested in this world always started with a thought and always started in an imagination. Anything, you look at, go from the internet, you look at, go back to electricity, or, even just the first car. Like it started in someone's imagination.
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
Now, wouldn't it be cool if we can, have a machine that flew in the air? It was just in someone's imagination. So using your imagination is a wonderful thing. To make it simple, I would, going from the future room to the present room, I would also think of one more word and changing one word, because when we use words to describe ourselves, we use the words I am.
Yes.
And that's our awareness of being. And so I am, whatever you put after I am, or whatever you use with I am, that's how you're defining yourself and you're describing yourself. And too often we listen to what other people say, and you're not good enough for that, or you're never going to get that job, you're not going to do that. So you keep saying to yourself, I am not. Yeah, I'm not going to be able to do this. I'm not. And so we keep describing ourselves to ourselves, I am not. But if we eliminated that word not, and instead with the I am, we stick in one word in the middle of it, which is already. I already am.
Oh,
love that.
I already am happy. I already, am optimistic, and I'm already on my way to wealth and satisfaction. I'm already there. That does something to you, hits you in the solar plexus, because you're coming from the standpoint of as if it's already happened already.
Yes.
And that like anchors you to the present too, I feel like.
Yeah.
That brings you right into the present.
Yeah, I love that.
And you're imagining that future as if it's already happened. That's what the great visionaries do. They see something and they look at it today as if it's already happened, and then it's not about imagining that and think of it as already happened and then not do anything. And you use the law of attraction to wake up in the morning and now you have $1 million at the foot of your bed. It doesn't work that way, but it does when you're thinking from the standpoint of I already am.
Yeah.
Those thoughts and emotions of satisfaction as if it's already happened, that is what you start to project out into the world. That's what you project out in the present room. And now that is how all those things, now you act on all those impulses, those intuitions, those things, maybe I should call that person. Wow, look at that. And now all these things start coming, and you start to expect positive things to happen. Versus when you're saying I am not, you have doubt. And you're constantly, you're no longer expecting them. So with I am not, it's full of doubt. With I already am, is full of expectation.
I love that. And I love how the wording of it. So have you studied NLP in the past? Just curious.
I have not.
Okay. I just feel like because we took an NLP class, I don't know, a year or so ago, and you're about to do another one, Kaylee, and they talk a lot about this, and it's, you just seem like you are this is so genius, the fact that you don't even haven't done the NLP, and this is so similar, and they can say it over and over, but it's the way that you say it that actually sticks in my head right now. So thank you for that. And you're right, the word anchoring, that it does, it anchors into the now.
Yeah.
And
I just feel expansive. When he was talking, I was I'm jiving with you.
Yeah. Well, it's also your energy too, Kevin, is really great. When you're talking about this, you get so excited, and it's I just want more. Keep talking. This is so great.
Yeah.
Do you offer coaching sessions or anything?
I have not started anything like that, and so, like I said, I wasn't expecting to write this book. once it poured out, and now it just got published in August.
Yes.
So I'm just going out talking about it now, and I'm going to allow whatever the next phase of my life takes. I am in the process of writing another book, similar to leveraging some of the concepts of the 3 rooms, but it's more of a fictional tale about a young boy learning to communicate with his own higher self.
Oh, wow.
So
that's impactful.
Just be interesting. So I'd let these things come, but also try to live this, because it is about teaching not only adults but teaching kids. It's a concept, because we all know about mindfulness and being in the present. We're just not very good at it. So if the simple concept of being in the past, present, or future, and monitoring your feelings and your emotions, it's easy to do. And even my daughter, who's in middle school, can pick people out and say, "Dad, that person's in the past room. He's so angry all the time. Look at him." And so that's what we want. If we can recognize what room other people are in, it makes it easier to recognize what room our own thoughts are in.
That's such a genius way to look at things. It really, really, really is. And you're right. Like, starting with the kids, like it took me, I don't know, I guess maybe 8 years I've been on my really deep inner work journey. The past 8 years. I mean, I've always been on the spiritual journey, but I say really like understanding myself. But if I had had those tools as a child, imagine like how our world would be changed. If we can get to those kids now and to learn, like, I'm living in this room, or I'm in the past, or I'm in the present, yay, or I'm in the future. And if we could really learn that, and controlling our emotions is huge, then imagine how beautiful the world could actually be. And it really does start with the youth. So I'm glad that you are touching on that. That sounds absolutely incredible, that new book as well. Are you gearing it towards youth, or is it for anyone?
Well, I think so. My daughter already said, "Dad, you should do a 3 rooms for kids."
Yes.
And
and
that's so she's kind of kind of helping me with that, and I think that is that's something where we're coming up with different concepts. But if you think about it, it's just it is all about awareness, because mindfulness is just the conscious awareness of your thoughts.
Yes.
And so just simply by being able to answer one question, which room are my thoughts in? It is, you have to be aware of your thoughts. And now you've already separated your awareness or your consciousness of your thoughts, so you're not at the effect of them anymore. So just being able to answer that all during the day keeps connecting you with that universal intelligence, or that divine consciousness that we're all connected to. And wouldn't that be helpful? Because it automatically, if we can keep coming back and connecting with that consciousness, that awareness, that's not judging that person. That's not worrying about what's going to happen tomorrow. That's a feeling of peace and satisfaction.
Yes.
That's what we want to constantly keep coming back to all during the day.
Absolutely. And so I'm curious too, how did you, because we hear about the I ams, and I know that's like a big thing in the spiritual community, and I don't know why I refuse to write them on my wall, but I know that I need to. And after this conversation, I'm like, okay, I need to go home and write this on my mirror.
Sticky paper.
And sticky paper, and already have it. I am already blank, and fill that in. And I don't, it's so interesting because you hear the I am consciousness so much. And I know it does help shift you into that space that you want to be in. How long ago did you start playing around with the I ams?
Quite a long time ago. Like I said, when I first started on the spiritual journey, then I started reading a lot of different people, and I think there was a guy, Stuart Wilde, who's back. He was, to some people he's a little bit out there, but he's a really brilliant person, and he used to talk about the I ams, and guys, and Emmett Fox used to talk about that, and so not only going all the way back to the Bible, but when I used to start thinking about I ams, I would do things, just make things general. I always have the same 4. I am happy, I am healthy, I am wealthy, I am wise. I'm happy, I'm healthy, I'm wealthy, I'm wise. And just always, and just repeating those things a million times. And then when it started, I already am, knowing that I already am. And anyone can do it, because everything is your perception.
Yes.
Yeah. So people can say, well, I'm not really wealthy, I'm not so healthy, I have this. Well, you can pick it apart, but you can always put it in context like, well, I'm much happier than that person. Wow, he's really going through something, or she's really going through something. And healthy, well, I could have this, and this person's really suffering now. Well, I guess compared to her, I'm very healthy. And man, I'm not as wealthy as I want to, but look at this person's, homeless, and they don't really have a home, and I'm trying to help them out. Well, I'm much better off than them, and maybe I'm not the smartest person in the world. So you can, all of a sudden in your head, you can rationally say, well, I am already these things.
Yes.
And the more you say them, I am, then the more they become real to you, and now you start to attract more and more happiness and health and wealth and wisdom into your life.
Absolutely. Do you have these posted around your house, like as reminders? I'm just curious.
I don't, but I say them every day.
Okay.
And as far as I have a vision board. My son years ago said, you should, you have a vision board, Dad, right? And I was like, well, I never actually had one, but then I put one up, and then, I'm actually, looking at one that was put up 2 years ago. That's, the publication of the 3 rooms.
Amazing.
Because it was like someday, I'm not an author now, but someday I will be. So I kept saying I already am. And even in the book, I said, as I'm commuting into the city to go to my, job for an investment bank, I know I'm a mystic author. I just, just hasn't manifested yet. But at some point in my life experience, it will, because I'm already there in my imagination, in my consciousness. And now the book's published, so I guess it's happened. So it does work.
That's incredible. It really, really is, and it's inspiring. And okay, so it's taken you said 3 years ago. So has it taken you 3 years to kind of get all the thoughts out into the book? Like, how long did it take you, if not that?
Yeah, I'd pretty much say 3 years. And maybe the most surprising or remarkable thing to me is early on, I wrote down the 10 chapters. I just had this concept of the book, and I wrote down 10 chapters, starting with, like, where are you, which room you're in, and then the past room, the future, and the present. And those 10 chapters never changed. Like, over the next 3 years, while I was commuting back and forth into the city and going, working full time, I just kept writing down all different kinds of ideas and thoughts. And sometimes they came from books or movies or songs or just life experiences. And I would just fill them in, like, oh, this goes into the past room. Oh, this is about anger turning to hate. Okay, that's in the past room. Oh, this is stress. Okay, that goes into the future, in the chapter on the future room. And after 3 years, all of a sudden, all the chapters were filled in, and they never changed, but they're filled in. And that's when I said, okay, I think I need to step away and publish this book.
And so what advice do you give for other people that have ideas on writing a book, whatever it may be? Any advice?
I would just say just start it, number one. You have to start. It's like anything. You get so much momentum once you start. But I hear so many times people say, like, I know I want to do this. I know I have this in my head and I want to get it out. Yeah. But you can say that forever. You can 10 years later you can say that. And I literally have a friend who said, he goes, I've been thinking about this for 10 years. I said, well, have you started yet? He goes, no, I'm going to start soon. I go, no. If you're going to start tonight. Like, go home. Just even do like a little outline. Yep. Just do a paragraph. Because then the next day you'll start to do a little bit more, and it doesn't matter if it takes 1 year or 3 years or 5 years, but you just keep filling it in. And even just fill out, it's just an outline, and as thoughts and things come, you just start to fill them in, and before you know it, because what is time? I mean, it's just all of a sudden,
no such thing, right?
All the chapters will fill in.
Now, also another advice, like, do you give advice on publishing on your own or trying to find a publisher?
I was originally going to self-publish, and I ended up finding a wonderful publisher down in Austin, Texas. But I'm not the person for advice on self-publishing. I think it's wonderful that people can do it, and people can self-publish now. And so because there's only, for the traditional publishers, there's only so many books they can take. I think, and so many more people now have a story to tell. And I do think that self-publishing is a very economical way to really publish a book, to get it out there, and then however you want to reach, from a marketing perspective or anything, that's, it's up to everybody. I think it's liberating to be able to to complete it. And it's not about
it's huge.
how many book
Congrats.
sales you have. It's just getting for yourself, getting that message, getting it out of you with a story that you needed to tell.
I love that. That's amazing. And so, like, with your process with shopping, did you have to like shop around to a lot of places before you got signed, basically, or like what's that process like?
Well, it's so I went with the middle route. One of my best friends already had used this publisher, and they take about 125 books a year, but they're not a vanity publisher where you pay them and then they don't do a real lot for you. It's not a traditional publisher where they pay you, but they do more the book, but they want you to do all the marketing. It's kind of a middle ground, for the two. But he had used them before, so they liked the story and they liked the concept, and so we worked out a deal. But like I said, there's lots of different ways to go. Even again, self-publishing is fine, but so many people, friends that I have that never thought that I was writing a book, because I never shared this with anyone. I never said like, oh yeah, I'm in the middle of writing a book.
Oh wow!
I just showed up at work and said, you know what, I think I'm going to step away from the business. 33 years in one firm at Citi, and I said, I wrote a book, and they said, what do you mean you wrote a book? When did you do that? I said, oh, I've been doing it over for years. But everybody has a book in them, and it's so get it out.
I love that. And congratulations on, being chosen for, that company in general, and just getting this book out there and getting your story out there. Yeah. I think it's amazing, the book that you have. It's going to help so many people. It's going to help me. And as an intuitive, I really see you doing classes, coaching, and I would totally sign up for that, because I feel like to hold myself accountable for talking about the IMs even, like, if you had a class on the IMs and just stay in that and how not to go into these rooms and then talk about the rooms too, I would completely sign up, whether it was online or in person. I would be there because I need that to stay in that space. Kind of like Esther Hicks talks about living in the vortex, staying in that vortex. Yeah. I need that, like, to just stay and live in this world. And I think it takes 21 days to make a habit. So like if it were at least 21 days, I would like stick to it, I feel like. So that's my advice to you. And I'm like asking you to do it, basically.
Next step.
well, thank you very much. And when you think about from an Abraham Hicks standpoint, getting stuck in the past room or the future room, or even in the present room, that's each room is your point of attraction. So that's and your point of attraction is your thoughts and emotions, and that's what you're projecting out. And so just think of that as that's whichever room your thoughts and emotions are in, that's your point of attraction. That's what you're going to attract into your life. So, and from a vortex standpoint, I call it the field of potential probabilities. Because every thought is just a vibration.
You're right.
That is stored as energy in this field of potential probabilities, and they're just waiting to manifest.
Yes.
And the ones that manifest for you are dependent upon which room you're in and which thoughts and vibrations you're projecting out.
Absolutely. And so let's go over some of the rooms too, because I'm looking at this and I'm hearing your wording too. So the past room, it's like more hurtful, more pain, more anger. Like, what emotions are in each room?
Very good question. So, when we're thinking about things typically in the past, and we're feeling things like anger, or resentment because of something that has happened in the past, guilt is a real big one. Sometimes people try to dump guilt on us based on what they think we've done, but we're even more brutal on ourselves. We feel guilty about things we said or things we didn't do, and we just constantly live in this feeling of guilt, and that's always from looking back. And unfortunately, other people can inflict feelings of shame on us, and it's a real damaging negative emotion, and it's about something that we did or didn't do in the past, or even things that people perceive us to do. Now, in the future, it's more things like anxiety and stress, thinking about things, feelings of lack. That we don't have and we're missing out, and those kind of feelings, and those, they can be powerful negative emotions. And the feeling, in the present room, I like to think of it as a feeling of lightheartedness. It's not only is it peace and love and appreciation and compassion and these kind of things, but a feeling of lightheartedness is light being the consciousness, or being conscious of of love. I mean, if you think of a heartedness of love, and it's just a happy, like, feeling. And ultimately, really all it is think of all those emotions we just talked about. In the present room, they're all derivatives of love.
Yes.
And in the past room and the future room, they're all derivatives of fear.
They are, yeah.
And
Well
so
said.
there really is only two emotions. There's love or fear. And each room, that's why we started out saying, in the present room, you're aligned with source energy, and that's where you want to be. And that's, anything, if you're feeling anything other than any of those derivatives of love, you're in the wrong room. The reason we'll say, these emotions tend to be in the past, it's because when you think about when you're feeling anger, and you say, why am I angry? It's typically not thinking about something in the future. You're typically thinking about something in the past. If you're feeling stress, you say, how am I feeling? I'm not feeling good. I'm feeling stressed. And then you say, okay, why am I feeling stressed? Well, typically it's not because of something that happened 4 days ago. It's typically happening for something that's going to happen. So that's how those emotions, we've kind of put them into different rooms. But people get caught up. I've heard people saying, like, well, that's actually this emotion. It's really not the past room. You probably should put it in the future room. Well, I'm not putting any emotions in any rooms. I'm saying typically these were where they are, but they're not. It's not the feeling of love. It's not a derivative of love, so you're in the wrong room. And then it's up to you to figure out why. And so, that's where, coming back to, into the present room from stress of the, about the future, or, things that happened in the past, and moving from room to room. That is the hardest thing. People can say, well, they're stuck in the past room, but you got to come back into the present room. People say, well, that's easier said than done.
Totally.
It's hard to just let that go. But we do need to know. Number one, we have to realize that it's us that are feeling so negative all the time.
Yeah.
And sometimes someone who we perceive did something to us, and we see them, maybe it's a coworker that, we think said something about us, last week, and now we're looking across the office and we see them laughing, and it's eating us up inside. We're like, well, why are they, so happy and I'm miserable? I'm so angry at this person. I want to go, pour some coffee on him. And that's not
sabotage the happiness.
That's just not how.
Hot coffee, really hot coffee. No, I'm kidding.
Hot coffee. But and then there's other things where when you look at people who have really gone through hardships, and they have truly forgiven someone, and it goes back to what we were saying earlier. It's just that's really understanding how we get out of the past room. The number one way and the most effective way is forgiveness.
Yes, I'm just going to bring that up.
The biggest challenge is that we have, we all have our own degrees of forgiveness. I'm forgiving, but this time, they crossed the line. They went too far. And what does that mean? They went too far. I mean, what line? What's the line of you can forgive them versus you can't forgive them? They said something about you, and you think they said something really bad, so now you're not going to forgive them. But this person, got a family member got killed by a drunk driver, and that person forgave that drunk driver. But you're still mad at that person. What you think they said about you 3 days ago, and you're not going to forgive them.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, you want to learn about forgiveness? Go talk to that person who forgave that drunk driver.
Yeah.
That's truly living, and they didn't do that to get the drunk driver off the hook.
Yeah.
To make the drunk driver feel better. They did that because they knew if they didn't do that and truly forgive that person, then they were going to carry that anger and resentment inside of them for the rest of their life.
Yes.
Every time they thought about that incident, going back into the past room, reliving those negative emotions. When you forgive them, now when it comes up, because it will come up again for the rest of your life, now when it comes up, you don't relive those negative emotions because, nope, I've already forgiven them. I've moved on. And now you can come back into the present.
No longer letting it affect you. I think. And working through those layers, because it, I think, is a process, which is what I wanted to ask you about. How did this book influence your own healing journey, if any, and what did that look like?
Well, it helped a lot. I mean, years later, I actually told my ex. I asked her if she would forgive me and for something which I didn't think I did anything. But you kind of let the other person off the hook.
Yes.
And you just say, so if you think that the other person's dealing with a lot of things and guilt and regrets and things, that it's not like, well, ha ha ha, I got the better of someone. That's not being in the present, and that's not aligning yourself with your source. And so when I asked her for forgiveness, I think she was a little bit surprised, and she said, well, yes. And then she said, will you forgive me? And I said, yes, I already have. She said, okay, great, and now we can go on and be co-parents, and we've been wonderful co-parents, and I've remarried, and we have another daughter, and everybody gets along, and it's all from this, not holding on to things in the past that can that can keep you chained to negative emotions for a long, long time.
Yes.
Yeah, and that's really inspiring. Thank you. My parents were divorced, and just to hear that perspective is like healing for me, and hearing that and you guys bonding and overcoming all that.
Yeah, and I bet a lot of people that's really super inspiring for. Yeah. It's kind of like that saying, it's a Hawaiian saying, I'm going to say it wrong, but ho'oponopono. And it's like, I'm sorry, please forgive me, thank you, I love you. And I feel like that's huge. It's also part of like the landmark, like forget, like please forgive me. And like taking and owning, like whatever it is that I've done, like please forgive me. And it does like change and shift that energy. I feel like for me, about like with healing with people, it's also, I know that we're put here all for a purpose, and that everything that happens in our life happens for a reason, a learning a lesson. And I know a lot of people get mad at me when I say that, because they're like the drunk driver incident you're saying, like that was supposed to happen. Yes, I do believe that was supposed to happen. And I do believe that how did it affect you? You can choose to stay angry your whole life, or you can choose the forgiveness and look at the beauty of what that person has taught you and those lessons that person brought you into their life, however short it may have been. How did they inspire you? And so for me, looking at everything that has happened to me, and I've been through some shit in my life, book to come one day, it's like that's the only way that I can look at it, or I would have so much anger and be in so much depression. And for me, like when I was younger, I was in a depressive state, like big time. I was like Alice in the rabbit hole, completely fell down that rabbit hole and didn't know how to get out. And I think the only way that helped me get out was having gratitude and having the forgiveness and recognizing that everything is a lesson. And with that being said, too, like it's funny because looking at your book with the 3 rooms, the 3 doors that are there, and even the blue, it reminds me of Alice in Wonderland. Like when she actually falls down the rabbit hole, and there's those doors, and one's a small door and one's a little door, and they're like different sized doors, and she has to fit the key into each door. And it's like some of them work and some of them don't, but it's like going into the one room, she has to shrink herself. What is and thinking about, like even with this book, like, are you shrinking yourself and like scooting back down? And it's like, what is the emotions that's bringing? Is that the past room that she's going into? And then like, oh, this room doesn't feel good. Nope, I'm going to eat this and I'm going to get bigger. And so like in the bigger room, or like your bigger self, right? Maybe that's the future. And then like, oh, eating this cake, this shrinks me back down to just right. And then going through that door and living your journey in that room. So your book, like that reminded me so much of Alice in Wonderland. And for me, that's like, I don't know.
I love that. And it's also like, to me, when you were speaking, it's like unlocking the key to our own psyche and our own hypnosis, and then learning how to go on our own journey to come out the other side.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Totally.
Awesome metaphor.
So anyway, I just love Alice.
That was a great analogy. Thank you.
Sorry, you missed it. I dressed up as Alice last night for Halloween.
She did.
Introduced at the beginning, so.
Yeah, and I was Supergirl, and so she fell in the rabbit hole, and I saved her from out of it. So it's on our mind, but it is one of my favorite analogies in life. And then it's just, I think everything is so synchronistic, and it's beautiful because just kind of talking about some things that have happened this week energetically, and then even in our own lives, and then even seeing your book and the book cover and like what it triggered inside me as I was just explaining. It's like, okay, this all makes sense, and this is so cool. And I just want to thank you for sharing your book with the world. And you're right, it's about getting that book out, because for you, like, what if you didn't get this book out? You're going to be helping so many people because of this book. You've already helped and inspired me, so thank you. And I'm sure all the listeners as well. I'm so stoked that you wrote this. So thank you for getting your book out, first of all. Like, really.
Yeah, and being vulnerable and
thank you.
sharing your
Thank
truth.
you very much. I really appreciate that.
Yeah.
No more sleepwalking.
No more sleepwalking. I stole that from you, by the way.
Yeah, quoting you.
We're quoting you. Yeah.
Yeah, being awake is just being aligned with your higher self. It's,
Yes.
Being in the present
practice,
room
right?
and feeling wonderful.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So we can find more about you at the3rooms.com. I know you're also on Twitter. It's Kevin Murphy 3, the number 3 and the letter R. And then Instagram, it's The 3 Rooms. And then we can also find your book on Amazon and Barnes & Noble as well. Correct? Anything?
That is correct.
Awesome. Is there,
Uh,
go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say, no, that's it. And I greatly appreciate you having me on. I love having these discussions. It's, it's very interesting, enlightening, and rewarding.
Absolutely. It's super inspiring. And I'm just like, really, you're inspiring to all of us. And just thank you so, so much for.
And you're already a bestseller too.
Yes. Yes. You're already. And I can't wait.
Thank you very much.
I can't wait to, read your other books and how you're going to help inspire other kids as well. I can already see it. So.
Yeah, and I love that your kids are inspiring you too. So keep that up.
Yes. Well, and
Let
that,
them help you.
And that you're inspiring your kids. I think that's so beautiful. It's so important to being able to speak to your kids these days, especially about these topics. And
having parent role models that show that and that consciousness is great.
That's super inspiring that you are that conscious role model for your kids. So.
And all your readers.
Well, thank you. And I think an article came out even this week that something like 91% of Gen Z kids are feeling stressed today.
Wow.
And
Absolutely.
that's
how
alarming.
can you not? Yeah.
It's really alarming. So, trying to help that generation will be important.
Oh, absolutely.
More
absolutely.
love, less fear.
Yes. Thank you so much for bringing this to us, and we'd love to have you back on again. And thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Kevin.
Yeah.
Well, I loved being on, and thanks again for having me.
Absolutely. We'll take care. And everyone, find his book on the3rooms.com, and we'll also post it on our website as well so that they can have a direct link to you. Perfect.
That's great.
Awesome.
All right, thank you very much.
Thanks so much. Have a great rest of your day.
Too. Bye-bye.
Bye. So that was just such a cool synchronistic conversation.
That was
I was
amazing.
just so cool, from everything that's going on energetically, Halloween, rebirth, the death of the old self, getting rid of that
And I love the metaphor,
falsities?
3 rooms. So it's okay, I'm in this room, now I'm in this room, now I'm in this room. You can kind of
where, and I love,
yourself and check in.
And I love how the fact that the emotions that go with each room, that's just okay, I'm going to go into, where am I at? And it's so interesting because I think I do live in the future room a lot. And it's I don't need to be that bigger, future self. I need to be in the now and the present in the now. And that is so calming. And that is what meditation does for people.
Yeah.
And the I ams I know they're so important. And it's I need to start doing what I say, what I preach in a sense. So that's going to happen. Yeah.
Practice.
Absolutely. Well, thank you all for joining us. We will be seeing you guys next week. Again, we air every Thursday at 3 p.m. What is it, Pacific time? I'm so out of it. 6 p.m. Eastern time. You guys can find us on LA Talk Radio, and all this show will actually be on there for download in just a little bit, as well as soulsexypodcast.com. You can follow me personally at Instagram at Real Bridgetta. And Kaylee?
Kaylee Bliss Yoga Diva, sorry.
Yoga Diva. And thank you so much for joining us this week. And I hope Charles is having a blast in Peru, and he'll be joining us back in studio next week. And you were rad. You'll have to fill in if he ever is on an excursion again. But thanks so much, and we'll see you guys next week. Thanks. Happy Halloweeny week.